From the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX, this is Reveal. I'm Al Edson. This week, we're going to take another look at stories about invisible workers, the armies of women and men who head to work, cleaning, building, cooking, doing jobs that aren't supposed to be noticed, and they go largely unseen. But now, one group of workers is speaking out to draw attention to some of the problems they face on the job. This is a rally of workers and activists at California's state capitol in Sacramento earlier this month. They gathered to raise awareness about the abuse that female janitors experience while cleaning buildings alone at night. This movement is just starting, and it was sparked in part by our investigation, Rape on the Night Shift. And now, a California lawmaker is working on a bill to make it safer for female janitors who work the night shift. Here's State Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez.
They're women who are working alone. They often are threatened with their immigration status. They're threatened with their job. They're threatened with their dignity. And as a result, they stay in these situations where they're being assaulted and raped.
Gonzalez plans to introduce new legislation this year and is considering ideas like having women work in pairs and mandating sexual harassment training. Those are two solutions that we also identified while reporting the story, and we want to play that again for you now. Here's reporter Sasha Koka of KQED.
The lights go out as the daytime office workers leave the building, and then room by room, they flicker back on. 3 stories of glass light up like a shadow play. The silhouettes of janitors appear on different floors, one polishing a window, another mopping. Outside, 2 women hide behind a palm tree, watching. Vicky Marquez is less than 5 feet tall, with heels on. Veronica Alvarado has tattoos and green highlights streaking through her hair.
Look, do you see him? There's a guy walking. He's passing the vacuum in the 2nd floor.
The women are casing this office park in suburban Orange County, about an hour south of Los Angeles. They're undercover investigators with a tiny nonprofit that's trying to root out abuses in the cleaning industry.
So we're walking around the building to see the possible entryways.
They'll sometimes wait for janitors near garbage dumpsters or inside bathroom stalls.
Pero no corras porque causa sospecha. Y es que como hay cámaras por todos lados.
Don't run, says Marquez. That makes us look suspicious to the security cameras.
Magia, magia, magia.
Magic, magic, says Alvarado. The door is still unlocked.
Buenas noches. ¿Cómo está?
On this night, they find janitors who work 7 days a week without overtime, others who have to buy their own cleaning supplies. But once in a while, they'll meet a woman who confides a darker secret, that she's being sexually abused on the job. Our investigation found that sexual violence is a problem at janitorial companies across the nation, from tiny mom-and-pop shops to big corporations, from companies that operate off the books to those with shares traded on the New York Stock Exchange. ABM is the nation's largest janitorial company. It's among a rare group of 15 American corporations that have been sued at least 3 times by the federal government for failing to protect workers from sexual harassment. ABM employs nearly 65,000 janitors. They clean major airports, city halls, courthouses, and towering office buildings across the country. That's the company Maria Magaña used to work for. Magaña is a tiny woman in her 50s. She's practically dwarfed by the giant vacuum cleaner she straps onto her back. She's been cleaning office buildings in California for nearly 2 decades. We went on the job with her one night.
I can leave it dirty. I dust most of the things. I even dust the signs. All these little windows, I clean them.
Magaña even uses a plastic fork to scrape the dust out from the crevices in the windowsills. The next day, we went to Magaña's house. Even though she was tired from cleaning late at night, she wanted us to come early in the morning before the neighbors woke up, because she didn't want them to know what we were there to talk to her about. But when we got to her street on the rural edge of Bakersfield, the neighbors were already playing music and drinking coffee on their front steps. Still, Magaña wanted to tell us her story. She says her supervisor at ABM used to harass her. When she started talking about that, she was much more comfortable in Spanish.
So
I hit him with my broom and he said, Maria, why are you so mad? What am I doing wrong? It's just a caress. I'm just being affectionate. I told him, you get any closer and I'll hit you with the handle right now. I told him, I'm going to spray this cleaner in your eyes.
But he didn't stop. And in 2005, Magaña says he raped her. She took us to the bank building where she says it happened.
Every time I come to pass by this bank, I remember what happened. That's why I agreed to let you take me, so I could help remind women they should work in places that are well lit, that they shouldn't work alone.
The building was closed, but she peered in through the tinted glass door.
Behind the stairs is the conference room where that man tricked me, got me into that room. He shoved me as soon as I walked in and raped me.
Magaña went to the bathroom, cleaned herself up, and finished working her shift.
Did you have sex with Maria Magaña against her will at the ABM worksite?
No.
3 years later, government lawyers deposed Jose Vasquez, the man Magaña says raped her.
Did you rape Maria Magaña at the ABM worksite?
No.
The deposition was part of a class action lawsuit involving 21 women, including Maria Magaña. It was brought by the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's the federal agency charged with protecting workers from discrimination. Anna Park was in charge of the case against ABM.
We did not believe they did all they could, and they allowed these women for years to be abused.
She says this was one of the worst cases of sexual harassment she had ever seen, and showed how the company failed to follow its own procedures.
Any good company will say, let's investigate this. Who else is affected? What else is going on? That didn't happen here.
The lawsuit claimed that ABM failed to protect the women from harassment and assault in the workplace. 14 harassers were named. A dozen of the plaintiffs pointed to one man, Supervisor Jose Vasquez. The EEOC found some witnesses, too. Scott Stevenson was volunteering one night at a fundraising dinner at a church in Bakersfield.
Sent some kids out to take some trash to the dumpster, and they came back with the trash. They thought somebody was hurt in the dumpster area. So I went to go investigate, see what was going on, and there was what I believed was a sexual assault taking place right in front of us.
He saw a janitor he recognized as Jose Vasquez near the dumpster.
I recall the belt not being buckled all the way on his pants. Remember that jingling.
He says Vasquez was standing in front of another janitor, a woman.
His arms were spread out almost like a starfish, so he was preventing her from leaving that area. Every attempt she made, he would grab her or grope her to get her back in front of him. She was crying. She was in tears. She had that help me look on her face.
Stevenson threw the trash into the dumpster.
It made a bang.
Startling Jose Vasquez, Stevenson called the police, and in their report, the woman said she was frightened. But when the police asked Vasquez to come to the station a few days later, he showed up with the woman. They both said they had just been playing around. The police dropped their investigation, but the church sent a letter to ABM reporting what Stevenson had seen.
There's no way that could have been consensual. I've never seen anybody have a romantic interlude by a maggot-smelling dumpster.
But ABM never interviewed Stevenson. A few months later, the company got 2 anonymous letters alleging that Vasquez was touching and harassing women and that he had a criminal record. "Help us," said one letter. "Please send someone to investigate." But at his deposition, Vasquez testified that ABM didn't ask him about the letters.
Nobody from ABM talked to you about sexual harassment allegations in or around September of 2005, correct?
No, sir, nobody did.
And the company hadn't checked his background when he was hired. Vasquez was a convicted rapist on California's sex offender registry. Government lawyers deposed Timothy Brecky, then a regional vice president for ABM.
What's your overall question?
Well,
please?
I'm putting the exhibit in front of you to remind you that he was convicted of rape by force.
I see that, yes.
Brecky admitted the company's human resources department didn't notice that when Vasquez filled out his job application, he left the question about criminal history blank.
So the question is, do you think it was a good idea to put someone who was convicted of rape by force supervising women alone in buildings at night?
No.
But Brecky asked why the women didn't report their alleged attacks to ABM. For example, Maria Magaña stayed on the job with Jose Vasquez for a year and a half after she says he assaulted her.
How these things were not reported in a timely manner, how there was no medical kind of backup to some of these things. I just need to have more information.
So it's the fault of the women?
Objection. Argumentative. You may answer.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
ABM didn't admit wrongdoing, but settled the case in 2010. The 21 women, including Maria Magaña, were awarded a total of nearly $6 million.
¿Tú quieres tu café?
No. Then mira.
5 years later, Magaña still lives in a cramped house in Bakersfield, taking care of her elderly mother and teenage son. She's the only income earner and says that's a big reason why she kept working at ABM so long after her attack. She still works as a full-time janitor and says she's uncomfortable spending the settlement money from the case.
Me pueden dar miles y miles, pero yo hasta la fecha no puedo.
They can give me thousands and thousands of dollars. But to this day, I can't spend the money with joy because I see it as dirty. That money won't ease my pain, that filthy stain on my heart from that man who marked me. It won't change the past or clean how dirty I feel.
As for Jose Vasquez, he was never charged with any crimes related to the ABM case. We tracked him down, but it wasn't easy.
I'm not walking into that. Hi, Pooch. Hi, puppy.
Because of his previous rape conviction, he's on California's sex offender registry. But when we went to that address, he'd moved without notifying authorities.
Hello?
We finally found him at a new house, but he didn't want to be recorded. He said he started his own cleaning company, and he wanted to put the ABM case behind him. Some of those women, he told us, were just money hungry. A few months after settling the EEOC case, ABM was featured on national television, a show called Undercover Boss. ABM portrayed itself as a company that takes a lot of pride in its workers.
Each week, we follow the boss of a major corporation as they go undercover in their own company.
ABM's CEO at the time, Henrik Slipsager, posed as an immigrant looking for work as a janitor.
The boss will trade in his well-manicured lawn and private tennis court for rolls of toilet paper and a squeegee.
Rub it.
On the show, a woman janitor taught him how to clean toilets.
You like it, right?
I love it. I tell you, I love it.
She had only one complaint about the company.
One thing probably ABM could do better is have women wear pants, because if I have to run around, bend over, I got to make sure somebody else, excuse my language, doesn't see my butt behind me or something like that,
In the end, impressed with her work ethic, Slipsager gave her a new uniform, a pair of pants instead of a dress. Slipsager and other ABM officials declined our repeated requests for an interview. Just before deadline, they sent us their own videotaped statement.
Hi, my name is Miranda Tolar, and I'm ABM's Deputy General Counsel for Employment Law.
Tolar outlined ABM's commitment to a safe work environment, including sexual harassment training for employees and a hotline where they can report concerns or complaints in 100 languages.
We believe that our policies and procedures are the gold standard in the industry. Our systems work. In some cases, we have been made aware of inappropriate behavior and taken action. In other cases, allegations of wrongdoing have proven to be false and even malicious, often by individuals previously in consensual relationships that ended.
ABM also sent us a letter saying our reporting is focusing on older cases, and the company has improved their policies and practices since the EEOC case was settled. But our investigation found lawsuits filed as recently as May 2015, where janitors say ABM didn't protect them from harassment and abuse. In some of the cases, women say they were fired for complaining. And the company continues to fight harassment cases aggressively, even after they lose at trial.
To this day, we are still fighting. They don't want to accept reality. They don't want to lose.
Maria Bojorquez is the mother of 5 and a grandmother. She says she was raped while working the night shift at the San Francisco Ferry Building. ABM investigated, but found her allegations inconclusive. Bojorquez sued ABM, and in 2012, a jury awarded her more than $800,000. The company is appealing. When they went to court in May, ABM's attorney told the judges her testimony wasn't credible.
She said, I was sexually harassed on an ongoing basis for many months, but there was not a single other witness who ever saw any alleged misconduct.
Well, would we expect another witness in a nighttime shift on a janitorial service where he's the foreman and she's assigned to a particular area?
There are times that they are alone, but there are also times there are other janitors who are working in that same building.
ABM's lawyer admitted, though, that their workers aren't always safe.
I mean, ABM and its parents, because they're also being sued, have tens of thousands of employees located across the United States and internationally, many who work in remote locations at night with minimal supervision. Bad things sometimes happen.
But is there a way to prevent bad things from happening? How about the federal agency charged with ensuring workplace health and safety?
My name is Jordan Barab. I'm Deputy Assistant Secretary of Labor for OSHA.
So if someone is raped at work, is that considered an unsafe work environment?
Clearly it's an unsafe environment if somebody is raped at work.
According to estimates from the Justice Department, about 50 workers a day are sexually assaulted or raped on the job. But OSHA doesn't recognize rape as a widespread hazard. Until our interview, sexual violence against janitors wasn't something OSHA had on its radar screen. Has OSHA ever taken on a case involving rape in the workplace?
Not that I'm aware of.
It absolutely is a health and safety question. Yeah, I'm a little baffled by that.
Lilia Garcia Brower heads up the team of grassroots investigators we met earlier, called the Maintenance Cooperation Trust Fund. It's a joint effort by the Service Employees Union and some big cleaning companies, including ABM, that are undercut by outfits operating in the underground economy.
That's probably the number one competitor for responsible businesses are the companies who are paying cash, not paying taxes, not carrying workers' comp. And frankly, those are types of cases where we've seen unreported rape and the more serious, violent, physically violent crimes.
Hello.
Hola, Vicky.
Hola. Voy aquí, Vero, por la presidio ahorita.
Vicky Marquez and Veronica Alvarado signal each other with their headlights. They're driving around office building parking lots at night, looking out for janitors. But there are only a handful of these undercover teams, focused on a few cities in California and Massachusetts. Sexual violence has become part of the national conversation. Universities, the military, they've had to publicly acknowledge the problem. But there are some 2 million janitors in the U.S., the people who scrub our toilets and vacuum our floors. They can also be victims of rape, but they're invisible to most of us, working on the night shift.
KQED's Sasha Coca reported that story for us. Since this investigation first aired, ABM, the janitorial company, settled with Maria Bojorquez. As a part of that deal, ABM agreed to bring in an independent investigator to look into all of the allegations of workplace rape or attempted rape in California. Now, let's bring in Daffodil Altan. She's a part of the team that brought us Rape on the Night Shift. While working on the story, she realized that she had a source close to home.
We were starting to try to vet their stories, and we were relying on court documents, on police documents. And, it just sort of, as I was having these conversations with some of these women, they started to feel a little bit familiar. They were monolingual, most of them Spanish speakers, and I would call them and we would really talk about other things, not specifically about the assaults because it's a traumatic event. And so we would have conversations, and they were going through a lot in their lives. And I was like, this reminds me of my conversations with my mom. And then it sort of went off like a bell, like, wait a second, my mom was a janitor. I know that.
I work night shift, 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock. It was very stressful job.
So you had to clean the mechanics' bathrooms?
Yes, mechanic bathrooms, and very filthy, dirty, and disgusting.
She starts telling me stories about what it was like at night that are essentially corroborating what I'm hearing. So I was in early years in high school, and what I understood was that my mom would get ready at 9 o'clock at night and leave at 10 and wouldn't be back till 6 in the morning. And as a kid, you don't think about the work lives of your parents. You don't think about what happens during those 8 hours or 9 hours at night. And I never had. I just knew that I didn't like it.
I'm wondering, how did this change the way you looked at your mom a little bit?
Well, I think one of the things that changed was when I actually was able to ask her. I said, has anything like this ever happened to you? What happened?
He was so mean to me. Always sent me to work in the hard places.
And then she told me that there was a supervisor who had followed her around and was asking for things from her, and she didn't want to give in. He was aggressive, he was flirting, and what he did was he then made her clean bathrooms for the entire shift.
Because he liked me so much. Ugly as can be, short and fat. And I have a handsome husband at home, so how am I going to look up to somebody like that? So I told him, I come to work not to look for boyfriend because I have my husband at home. And he was so mean to me. All the time he gave me the hard work, all the hardest place I can do. And in my Monday, always give me bathrooms to clean. Only bathrooms, because he was so mad to me.
And then she figured out somehow that she could complain to the union, and she filed the complaint. And I said, how did you figure this out? Was there a hotline? Did somebody give you that information? She said, no, I just figured it out on my own. She was vulnerable out there. And because she was doing so much for us at home, when she got home, she didn't talk about work. She got the lunches ready. She made sure we all were going to go to school. And so it makes me realize that some of these victims that are in the stories, they have kids that we've met, and the kids remind me a lot of what we were like. A
big chunk of the story is about working moms, and you're a working mom.
One of the most powerful things that comes out of my work and this experience is that my mom was doing the work that she was doing to make sure that I would be able to do work that I wanted to do. She didn't want to be a janitor. Now that I'm a working mom, it's going to be important for my daughter to see that I'm doing work that will hopefully help other people.
And it sort of feels like your mom laid down the foundation so you wouldn't have to do that type of work, and also so your daughter wouldn't.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of the women who we were meeting and, who participated in these projects, that's what they were trying to do for their kids.
Daffodil Altan is a producer for Reveal. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Daffodil was a part of a team of reporters and producers that includes Lowell Bergman and Andres Sedgel from the investigative reporting program at UC Berkeley and Bernice Yearn of Reveal. The entire project was a collaboration with IRP, KQED, PBS, Frontline, and Univision. You can watch the Frontline documentary at revealnews.org. When we come back, we head to Asia to look into the dangers that factory workers are facing as they assemble electronics that most people can't live without. You're listening to Reveal.
Hey podcast listeners, it's Cole Goins from Reveal. For the past 2 weeks, you've heard us asking you for a big favor to take a quick survey. Tens of thousands of you listen to our show each week, and we want to know more about you and what you're interested in. So help us out. While you're listening to this episode, head over to surveynerds.com/reveal. You'll have a chance to tell us more about you and what you think of this show. It'll take less than 2 minutes, it's quick, it's easy, and your feedback will really go a long way. That link again, surveynerds.com/reveal. Thanks so much.
From the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX, this is Reveal. I'm Al Edson. We've been talking about invisible workers today, people who work behind the scenes doing jobs that largely go unnoticed. Our next story takes us to Asia, where millions of factory employees assemble the smartphones, tablets, computers, and other gadgets we've grown to depend on. The labor laws in most Asian countries are less strict than they are in the U.S., and that means the workers are at greater risk from the chemicals they work with every day. Reporter Sandra Bartlett traveled to South Korea, a place many people call the Republic of Samsung. For this story, we first brought you last summer.
I'm on a busy street in Seoul, outside the global offices of Samsung Electronics. Rows of people are sitting on thin cushions on the cold sidewalk listening to a singer. I can't understand the Korean words, but I can tell they're sad. The song ends, and a man with short gray hair walks to the front of the crowd. Wong Sang-ki nods and starts his story of a taxi driver's fight against one of the largest corporations in the world. Wong talks about his daughter Yumi. She was diagnosed with leukemia less than 2 years after she started to work in a Samsung Electronics factory. He describes how she died in the back of his taxi on the way home from a chemotherapy treatment. She was 22 years old. After Yumi's death, Wong made a workers' compensation claim. It was rejected, and he went to court. In 2011, the court said there wasn't scientific proof to link the factory work with leukemia, but it said that constant exposure to toxic chemicals had caused or at least accelerated the development of leukemia. Wong is still waiting for the compensation to be paid. Korean women who work in the electronics industry have a significantly higher risk of miscarriage and menstrual problems. That's according to a study published in May of 2015 by the U.S.-based Public Library of Science. The data came from national health insurance claims between 2008 and 2012. The study pointed out that reproductive problems are warnings for other health risks, such as cancer. The morning after the memorial, I take a train to the city of Shanxion and then a taxi to a 3-story apartment building above a tire repair shop. There's a folded wheelchair leaning against the wall at the bottom of the stairs. I climb to the second-floor apartment, take off my shoes, and enter a tiny room without furniture. Hoon Hai Ki-young sits on a cushion against the wall, hugging her knees. Hoon looks younger than 38, her long hair pulled back into a ponytail. Hoon was recruited by Samsung in high school. During the spring exams the company holds to find new workers. As many as 200,000 young people register to take the test each year.
I thought 5 years will be enough time for me to make money and wanted to come back and do some business or like sell something with my mother.
Hoon glued wires and electronic pieces onto a circuit board using a cream she found out later may have been lead-based. She developed cold and flu symptoms and problems with her menstrual cycle. Doctors couldn't tell her what was wrong. In 2005, 4 years after she left Samsung, an MRI revealed a brain tumor and she had it removed. Now she has trouble speaking.
After the operation, I found myself having become a disabled person.
Hoon made a claim for workers' compensation and was denied. But something has shifted in Korea.
Electronics has officially apologized and promised compensation to workers who've gotten incurable diseases.
In May of 2014, after years of ignoring the memorials and the demonstrations, Samsung's vice chairman Kwon Oh-hoon made a public apology for the sickness of its workers on national TV,
saying the company was sincerely sorry for having neglected the pain of the victims and their families and for not having settled the issue earlier.
The company promised to compensate the sick workers or the families of workers who died. I asked to meet with somebody from Samsung, but the company said an interview would interfere with the compensation negotiations. It had one of its public relations staff, Park Shi-yoon, record answers to my questions. Park said Samsung is offering compensation because it's the right thing to do.
Not because we have any legal or court order mandates to do so.
or even any scientific evidence to link these illnesses to the workplace.
She also says workers are protected from the chemicals they handle.
All Samsung employees receive information during mandated training about the chemicals they handle, including possible harm posed by those substances.
I wanted to see the training materials, but was told internal policies could not be shared with me. Big companies like Apple and Samsung say protective equipment, automation, and air circulation protect workers. But the companies don't manufacture all the components that go into their cell phones, tablets, or computers. There are hundreds of subcontractors who make parts for many companies. Even Samsung makes components for Apple phones. The electronics industry is global and restless. Like a flock of birds, when one company changes direction, they all do. Vietnam is the newest destination. Shift change at a Samsung factory near Hanoi is amazing to watch. Young women and men walking from every direction. Hundreds of scooters buzz along the road like an advancing army. From the highway come the buses, bus after bus after bus, snaking into the parking lot. About 40,000 people work in this factory. Divided by 2 shifts, that means close to 20,000 people are starting their day. For half an hour, it's buzzing scooters, honking buses, and then it's over, and you can hear the birds again. In a recent study of 3 factories, the non-profit Center for Development and Integration in Hanoi found many workers with headaches and dizziness and reproductive problems. The center's managing director, Young-Big Ang, says this is the first study to identify hazards in the industry.
It's a new industry. There isn't any research, but from our research, we see that electronics is not safe.
Jung says workers need to be educated about their work environment. Ted Smith is helping with that. Smith is an American environmentalist who started the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition in 1982. Today, he's the coordinator for the International Campaign for Responsible Technology. He travels all over Asia, training workers, labor unions, and doctors about the risks of working with chemicals.
We do a number of exercises where the workers get involved in mapping their own factories so that they can identify where the hazards are.
Smith says what's missing from the training is knowing the names of those hazards, the chemicals.
What we're trying to do through this training is to develop enough pressure from the workers themselves, as well as from other sources, to get the companies to make this public.
In the meantime, a database of chemicals is being built. Smith is working with Northwestern University researchers and environmentalists from around the world.
We've really had to do it from scratch. Now, it has over 1,100 chemicals on it. Many of them have very, well-defined scientific data behind them, identifying them as carcinogens or reproductive toxins or neurotoxins.
Once the list is made public later this year, Smith hopes the companies will respond by revealing the chemicals they use. The next step would be to convince them to replace the worst chemicals. And Smith says that's where public pressure might make a difference.
That story is from Sandra Bartlett, an independent journalist based in Toronto. Her work was supported by the Fund for Investigative Journalism. Since this story first aired, Samsung has settled with some of the families, but not all of them. And there have been some protests over the way the company has been handling the compensation, including a sit-in outside Samsung's headquarters in Seoul that's been going on for more than 5 months. They're upset because Samsung will only negotiate with one family at a time, ignoring the mediation process with the larger groups representing the workers. And the company requires that families sign a document that they are not allowed to have a copy of. Back in a moment. This is Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX.
Hey everyone, it's Ali Winston from Reveal. For the past year, I've been investigating a massive database in California that law enforcement use to collect information about suspected gang members and people they know. It's called CalGang, and it's rife with problems. Not only has false information found its way into the system, it's impossible to know whether you're even in it if you're an adult. and being included in CalGang can lead to extra jail time for those facing charges. Right now, there are more than 150,000 people in this database, and 85% of them are Black or Latino, even though they only make up 45% of California's population. There's a lot to this investigation, and you can get the full story on our website, revealnews.org/CalGang.
From the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX, this is Reveal. I'm Al Edson. Today, we've been hearing stories of workers who face dangers on the job, dangers that most of us don't even know about. Part of the reason is that they work behind the scenes. They're largely out of view, but sometimes they get thrust right out into the open. That's what happened on March 16th, 2010. There was a car accident in Manhattan, not New York City, but Manhattan, Kansas. After investigating the scene of the accident, police end up at a house just down the alley. Here's what the police wrote in a report, read by Reveal's David Gill.
One witness advised that this particular residence was occupied by several Mexican males who worked at Bamboo Buffet. During the sweep, it was apparent that there were multiple people staying in this residence. Based on the statements, I believe that the Bamboo Buffet and the Hong Li Job Agency are involved in human smuggling. I left the scene and contacted the ICE tip line to report the incident.
The calls went to a Homeland Security office in Houston and set in motion an investigation that would uncover a human smuggling network throughout 20 states. Reveal reporter Peter Hayden, who's based at the Houston Chronicle, picks up our story from there.
There are more than 40,000 Chinese restaurants in the U.S., nearly 3 times the number of McDonald's.
General Tso's chicken? Very famous one in here.
But who is in the kitchen? In many places around the country, it's an undocumented worker from Central America or Mexico. The restaurants and the job agencies that supply the workers call them amigos. Christian Troches was one of those amigos. I meet him at a Home Depot parking lot in Houston's Chinatown. Christian is undocumented. He's waiting around for someone to offer him day work, like a couple dozen other guys scattered around. These days, he's doing construction work, but he used to work in a Chinese buffet, a job that took him all the way to Oklahoma.
We were told they provide food and a good place to stay with our own beds. But when we got there, they just gave us a blanket to sleep on the floor. 6 or 7 people sleeping on a blanket on the floor? We worked 16 hours a day. And at the end of the month, when we were supposed to get paid, the owners just said, get lost, or we'll call the police on you. So we had to leave. Then we were in a big mess, without money, without food, with no support whatsoever in Oklahoma, where we didn't know anybody.
Christian was left stranded and says he never got paid. He ended up on the street, sleeping under some cardboard for a while. Then he hitched a ride back to Houston. It's a story that many others share.
They offered me a job washing dishes in a Chinese restaurant, and they sent me off in the van.
This is Luis. He's also from Honduras, maybe 5'4", 150 pounds, thick black hair, a strong handshake. He's friendly, but nervous about being interviewed on tape. We agreed not to use his real name because he helped law enforcement in their investigation of a human smuggling operation. And the they he's talking about is the Hong Li Job Agency.
I got the job from those little cards they give out. I called and went to the agency.
The Hong Li Job Agency sent Spanish-speaking recruiters to stand on Bel Air Boulevard in West Houston. They handed out business cards, soliciting men and women to work for about $4 an hour.
And they kept moving me around from one state to another. Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Chandler, Oklahoma, in Kansas, Concordia, y aquí en Houston, Texas.
Luis says he stayed at each buffet from 8 months to a year. Then he was moved to another restaurant. That's how he got on a buffet carousel, circling the Midwest for almost 4 years. Luis was lucky compared to some other workers. One guy placed in a Houston restaurant says the owner made him pour lye into a clogged drain. The chemical shot up in his face and burned his eyes out. He's now suing the owners. Another man's thigh was gashed open by a potato slicing machine, down to his femur bone. The restaurant owners got someone to drop him off at a hospital. Later, they denied that he ever worked there. That guy also sued and settled out of court. Ken Guest is an anthropology professor from Baruch College in New York City. He spent the last 2 decades researching Chinatown and Chinese-owned businesses in the U.S.
I think the restaurant owners have found that the Hispanic or Latino workers are actually willing to work for less than some of the Chinese immigrants. They don't speak the language that the Chinese restaurant owners speak, and so they're even more vulnerable to labor exploitation.
And that's exactly what worried federal investigators in Houston. After that tip came in from Kansas, Homeland Security agents in Houston sent a confidential informant into the Hong Li agency. They told him to pose as someone looking for work. Within 15 minutes, he was in a car headed to San Marcos, Texas, about 3 hours west of Houston, with Special Agent Matt Baker in pursuit.
We followed him there. He was dropped off. We videotaped the money exchange. And within about 10 minutes of his arrival, he was at work, washing dishes. So there was no time for employment paperwork, no time for job interviews, no health screenings, or any kind of training.
Baker says, for restaurant owners, this black market for labor had advantages over your standard help wanted sign.
That amigo's going to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and keep their mouth shut.
Malcolm Bales is the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Texas. He launched the case, along with the Homeland Security investigators. They started looking at 2 job agencies in Houston's Chinatown, Hong Li and its competitor, Tai Shan. Federal agents suspected the agencies were providing undocumented immigrant workers to Chinese restaurants.
For us to find out what was going on, we needed to understand the decision makers. And who were their clients? How big was this case? Where were the customers located? And really, what was the nature of the transactions? And that's why we decided to intercept the telephones.
Bales and the team of federal agents set up wiretaps in 2012. They began listening in and started to hear how it all works.
Hello? 哎，小妹啊，哎，我是Linda。那个，我想问一下，那天那个amigo回来了吗？
The agencies advertised openly in Chinese language newspapers like the World Journal. The ads use words like hardworking Mexicans and Central Americans, transportation provided, and all of it under the table. Bales says the clients would see those ads and start calling.
Typically requests from the restaurateur for a couple of cooks, or I need 3, busboys, or just giving a number. There would be a quick negotiation, per head price and a delivery date, and then the conversation would be over.
Okay, bye-bye.
The woman who answered the phone at Hong Li Job Agency was Lena Soon. She ran the agency with her husband, Chenglin Ma. But to their Hispanic clientele, they were known as Linda and Pablo. On this wiretap, you can hear Linda giving advice on how to handle the workers.
You have to be more mean. Don't be too nice. If you're too nice, it's not going to work.
But you have to be nice to them. If they run away, you can't run a business.
Listen, you have to use your head with those Mexicans, understand? You have to scare them a little. Then you won't have a problem.
Okay, I get it. Let me see what I can do.
If you let them have their way, it's going to be a mess.
Linda knew a lot about how to hook a desperate immigrant looking for work. She used to be one. She came to the U.S. from China in the 1990s. At first, she babysat and then worked at a store that rented Chinese DVDs. Her boss had a side business, placing undocumented workers in restaurant jobs. He recruited Linda to help him, and when he retired, Linda took over the business. She issued each worker a contract. The list of jobs went from dishwasher, the lowest paid position, to prep cook, to fry cook at the top of the kitchen food chain. But Linda was shrewd. If someone claimed to be a fry cook, Linda might grab his arms and hold them up to her face. No, she'd say, you don't have enough scars and burns to be a fry cook. People in the Chinese restaurant business all over the country knew Linda. Agent Baker and his team discovered that the Hongli and Taishan agencies had customer contacts for more than 1,000 restaurants in 29 states. Agent Baker says his investigators sat down with one restaurant owner as far north as Brewer, Maine.
They asked her, you have these two individuals from Houston. How do you get them here? How does this occur? The manager's response was, well, everybody calls Lena soon. It was almost like a given, like if you need amigos, you call Houston.
At least that was until one cold January morning in 2013.
Hi.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
I'm sorry, my friend he don't know English.
A federal agent calls Linda from the side of a highway in Texas after one of her drivers got stopped by a state trooper. He had 5 undocumented immigrants crammed into his car.
Can you ask him where he's going?
Oh, he go work in Arkansas.
Oh, he's going to work in Arkansas?
Yeah.
And what about the people in his car?
Yeah, go working. They go to the restaurant go working.
Oh, they're going to a restaurant to go work?
Yeah.
Okay. Where did he get the people?
Oh, from Houston.
From Houston?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the problem is it doesn't look like any of these people got immigration status to be here legally. So right now he's transporting undocumented aliens.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Would you tell him that we're going to have to arrest him for...
When the officer hands the phone back to the driver, Linda speaks to him in Mandarin. She knows she's busted. It could be the end of the whole operation.
What's going on?
We're busted. He's going to get the immigration office involved.
Really?
Grab all the receipts out of the car. Don't give them to the police.
And we're in big trouble.
Immigration agents raided more than a dozen places in the Houston area today. Investigators say the people arrested were all involved in a massive human smuggling operation.
Nearly 4 years after the investigation started, Homeland Security raided the 2 job agencies. They arrested and indicted 32 people. Linda and 8 others were charged under the RICO Act. That's a federal law used to target organized crime. The charges also included making money by employing, transporting, or harboring unauthorized alien workers. Authorities seized nearly $4 million in assets. They also raided Linda's bank safe. Special Agent Baker says they recovered nearly $50,000.
We believe she made a lot of money. Her cut was usually 150 to probably 200 per alien, but she could send out aliens on a daily basis year-round. I watched her on weekends. I watched her on holidays. Definitely not banker's hours.
Baker says Linda sent much of her money back to China via Western Union. This type of bust is rare. In most of the country, from New York to Los Angeles, job agencies like Linda's operate in plain sight. U.S. Attorney Malcolm Bales says the demand is insatiable.
While people seem to be upset about illegal immigration, everybody likes, going to eat Chinese food, and they like eating it cheap. They like having their yards cut for cheap. They like having the construction costs of their home lower than they should be.
Linda is now serving 18 months in a federal prison in Aliceville, Alabama. We wanted to talk to her, but she declined. Her attorney, Neil Davis, spoke to us instead.
She was really a wonderful, kind lady, what I would imagine a Chinese grandmother to be like.
Davis says the RICO prosecution was government overreach. He calls Linda nothing more than a matchmaker. introducing people looking for a job to people looking for workers.
She's one of the clients that really sticks out in my mind as someone who was a genuinely good person, had a good heart. Her and her husband did a tremendous amount of volunteer work. They are Buddhists. They would buy live chickens or whatever in the Chinese community, the grocery stores, and free them because they were against eating meat.
Even though Linda's in prison, there are signs that the same type of operation is still going on in Houston. I got a hold of a little card recently that reads in Spanish, Amigo work immediately. Dishwashers, prep cooks, and fry cooks wanted. I tried to go to the address, but it was fake, so I called the number.
Hello? Hello, is this the Houston Employment Agency? Yes. My name is Peter Hayden. I'm a reporter here in Houston. What kind of jobs do you have?
What are you doing? What are you looking? What are you doing? What do you do? The dishwasher, cortador, freidor, cocinero. What are you doing? What do you do?
I am just trying to find out.
I was looking for information. Instead, I got offered a kitchen job. That comes as no surprise to U.S. Attorney Malcolm Bales. What would you say if I told you that there are new employment agencies in Houston handing out cards in Spanish, looking for these kind of workers?
We didn't stop it. All we did was stop those folks. The appetite, the market is there for this cheap labor. And so as long as that exists and people think that they can get away with it, well then, we could work these cases all the time.
That story was produced by Peter Hayden with reporting from Karen Chen and editing from Maria Carrillo at the Houston Chronicle. Before we go, we wanted to take a minute to tell you about another podcast you should be listening to from our friends at Longform. They've got in-depth conversations with the best storytellers in the world, including This American Life's Ira Glass, Wild author Cheryl Strayed, and Michael Lewis, who wrote The Big Short. And you might like the recent episode with Brooke Gladstone from On the Media. She talks about being a bad waitress, her comic book, and a career of decoding the news. Check out new episodes every Wednesday at longform.org and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Julie B. Chan was our lead producer on today's show. David Richer was the editor, and Deb George was the senior editor. Today's production included help from Cole Goins and Christina Jewett. Our sound design team is the Wonder Twins, my man, Jay Breezy, Mr. Jim Briggs, and Claire C. Note Mullen. Thanks to senior editor Andy Donahue. Our editor-in-chief is Amy Pyle, and Krista Scharfenberg is our head of studio. Suzanne Reaver is Reveal's executive editor, and our executive producer is Kevin Sullivan. Our theme music is by Camerado, Lightning. Support for Reveal is provided by the Reva and David Logan Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, and the Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation. Reveal is a co-production of the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX. I'm Al Letson. And remember, there is always more to the story.